I love listening to these wascally little birds. Little wascally webbits. They're not webbits, they're birds, but I like the silly little ones that sound like they've got some kind of sassy attitude. I'm going to talk with you today about self-talk. The things that come across our minds, we can feel like are just the things that we're thinking. But I want you to visualize your thoughts. This is kind of a meditation practice, but don't get scared away from that, because you don't actually have to empty your mind, and you don't have to quiet all your thoughts. You don't have to close your eyes and be in a specific special position. There are things you can do like that, but I have found, especially for the ADHD part of my brain, I got to go with what my mind is doing with that at the moment. But within that, there's a framework. I am the gatekeeper of my mind, and I like to visualize when a thought crosses my mind. I get to choose if I'm going to internalize that thought or if I'm going to let it pass on by. And that thought can come across my mind, but I don't have to make it my own, if that makes sense. So, for example, I might have a negative thought about my self-image or my capability. I might think, oh, I'm so bad at this, but do I want to internalize that? No. If I kind of in my mind take a step back, and if it helps you, this is actually especially helpful with anger management. Think about the emotion or the thought that you have. Picture yourself setting it on a table and observe it. Think about that thought and why that thought is there. And what is behind that thought? Why would you have that thought? And you can kind of logically dissect it and pick it apart a little bit. I have found that so helpful for anger management and emotional regulation. I told you there were wascally birds around here. If you've seen Lord of the Rings, there's this part where Gandalf is fighting this Balrog, and he's like, "You cannot pass," and he sticks his staff down. And I picture myself sometimes doing silly things like that, because you know what? You've got to do what works. You got to do it. You got to not be afraid to try things. That I like to use is what we call I statements. Instead of saying something like, "You are good at this," we can choose to say the things that we want to affirm to ourselves. But if you say "you this," "you that," I find that not to be as effective as saying it the way that the negative thought or the lie wanted to say it. The negative thought wanted to say, "I'm so bad at this," right? I'm going to say, "I am learning. I am good at whatever part of it," right? Like, say, like, if you get embarrassed or something, and you could think, like for me, for example, I might be at a social function and be trying to connect with people, and then in the middle of a conversation or right after, I would be like, "Oh no, am I oversharing? Maybe I'm oversharing." Or I think, "Oh, I thought it was good, but then I think I overshared." Because the thing is, I can read people's emotions, but it's hard for me to do the thing to respond in a way that they feel is appropriate or that connects to them, doesn't come across as too awkward, So instead of beating myself up about that and telling myself negative self-thought, I can say, "I care about people. I am brave. I recognize when people are hurting. I celebrate with people when they have something to celebrate. I share in their joy. Another thing that is really good to do is a gratitude practice and phrase things in a way that you are saying things that you are thankful for. And so some of these can be things about yourself, but I like to be thankful for things around me. I can get frustrated with the circumstances and say, I hate this, or I can say things like, I'm so thankful that I got a chance to practice today. I am so thankful for getting to be in the mountains today. I'm thankful that I got to be in nature today. For myself, I'm a Christian and I pray. And something that's really great about prayer is, especially for a lot of my time spent in prayer, there's a lot of posturing myself with gratitude and thanking God for things. And it's good to thank God, but it's good for us too. It's good for our nervous systems to regulate when we're not just laser focused on those things that we view as negative stimulus. So I want you to think, the next time you're tempted to have a negative thought, instead of saying, I negative emotion, or I bad thing toward yourself, you can acknowledge the thing. Don't just be like, hey, like, I'm going to ignore it and pretend that's not happening. That ignoring it, pretending it doesn't exist, I feel like doesn't help. I think it's important to, especially with really hard things or traumatic things, to acknowledge the hurt, acknowledge the difficulty, grieve, but don't wallow and stay in that and let that be your only focus. You also can look for the silver linings. There are always silver linings. That, if you don't know where that term comes from, when the sun is behind the clouds and you feel like you're in a storm, whether that's metaphorically or literally, you can't see the sun, but it's there. And at the edges of the clouds, you can see these gold or silver edges. That's the silver lining. So even with storm clouds in life, there is always a silver lining. That's something that I try to instill in my kids. And I'm telling myself, I'm preaching it to myself at the same time, all of the time. But I want to encourage you to think about that next time you're tempted to be harsh with yourself or to just be negative and complaining about your circumstances. Think about, okay, but what can I be thankful for? What can I do? What am I good at? What is something that I do like about myself? What is something that I can thank God for with myself? What's something I can thank God for with the blessings in my life? And even if those blessings, for example, kids, they're blessings, but they also come with a lot of hard stuff, I can be thankful for the good parts too, and not just resent the gifts that we're given. I hope you have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.